alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is a returning guest, another guest from the distant past of this podcast, distant past within the last couple of years. It's Bruce Solheim. Welcome back to the program, Bruce.
Well, thank you for having me back. Glad to be here.
Well, it's always good to have a returning guest, and I remember I was very fascinated by your nonfiction book last time we chatted. I still remember, I forget the title, but I remember the basic subject matter. So I got the. Yeah. It's still lingering after all this time. So definitely interesting stuff. But you've got a different subject, a different story. Well, a totally different genre and everything you bring and form you're bringing today to talk about. Yeah. I decided to after 37 years of thinking about it, I've decided to publish a comic book. So it's a full-fledged comic book, full-color comic book, all ages, too. So, And what's that called?
It's called Snarc, S-N-A-R-C. And 37 years ago, when I was in engineering school in Montana Tech, in Butte, Montana, I published not a comic book, but a comic strip in the school newspaper. And it was very popular at the time. This was 1982, a long time ago. And it was the character is a half human, half alien person or creature or entity that comes to Earth and has adventures and misadventures. And he's kind of a peaceful soul. And so that was the concept at first. And now I've made it a little bit more sophisticated, but he still comes to Earth. And he's got a mission, and his unfortunate mission from his home planet is to prepare Earth for invasion or colonization, I guess is the better way of saying it. So, but because he's half human, of course, there's the built-in tension, and conflict. And he has a companion with him, this I call it the cosmic staff. He's kind of a wisecracking, like a stick, but he's very sophisticated and he's got powers and stuff. And anyway, he emulates kind of the '60s cool cats, like Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack. That's kind of how he talks and how he acts as this computerized staff or cosmic staff. So he's kind of the comic foil in this whole thing as Snark has these adventures around the United States, different locations in preparation for this mission, which, of course, he comes to decide that he can't do. He's got to figure out a way to please his masters back home and talk them into working with us instead of, colonizing us and enslaving us. So that's kind of the premise of it. As he for his adventures, so it's got science fiction, it's got history, visits historical spots. It's got some, I guess, personal things about the backstory that comes out, this conflict of his being half human and half alien, and also humor. There's a lot of humor in it too. That's very important to me, and it's for all ages. So it's appropriate for, basically kids older than 9 would kind of get it, and adults will get it too. I mean, it'll be entertaining for adults too. It's kind of like the old Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoon show. Those of you that have seen that, it's got, you can enjoy it at different levels. Have understanding.
Cool.
That's kind of the way it's built. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a little, I don't know if you've ever heard of, say, Axe Cop, but a little more sophisticated than something like that. Which is actually written by a kid, very young child who wrote that story, apparently.
It's amazing that youthful talent. And here, I'm not youthful. I'm 61 now, so this is a lifelong dream to publish a comic book, because comic books are very important to me. They saved me. I often say they saved me because I was struggling to learn how to read. and my mom allowed me to get comic books, and I just devoured them. That's how I really got proficient at reading. And so I often say that comic books saved me.
Oh, that's beautiful. Actually, growing up, and this will kind of show how young I am, relatively speaking, but my parents gave me not comic books, but well, they were books, but they were collections of comic strips, Calvin and Hobbes, when I was real little, and that's basically how I started learning to read, was with Calvin and Hobbes. All
I
my
love
siblings
Calvin
learned
and
how.
Hobbes.
Yeah, it's a wonderful comics, but yeah, and it's funny because then years later I was one of the both myself, my twin brother, and then another set of twins. It's a weird story, right? There's so many twins in it. Another set of twin brothers. We were the top readers in our class when we took the standardized tests. It was kind of funny, and we'd all grown up on Calvin and Hobbes, all four of us. It was kind of fun. It was kind of funny. So comics are definitely a good way to learn, especially for kids, because they're just a little easier than reading a block of text, a big wall of a
because that can be quite intimidating, especially if you have dyslexia or some undiagnosed whatever learning disability, which I'm sure I did, but somehow I've overcome it. But I don't think it matters what the entryway is into literacy, as long as you get into books. And eventually you can read War and Peace or something. You don't have to start off with it. It's so intimidating for young people. I think that it's a great way to do it. And comics really are they're considered a lot of people consider them to be kind of like low art or low culture, but they're actually quite sophisticated. And the official name is sequential art. That's what they call it. There's really there's a unique way of presenting the story. And I was very lucky in that I was able to connect with Gary Dumm, spelled D-U-M-M. He worked with Harvey Pekar on American Splendor, which became a movie in 2003 with Paul Giamatti. And Gary's been doing comics since the early 70s, and I was able to convince him to want to work with me first on a couple of books, illustrating a couple of books, including my timeless books, which are what we talked about last time, the paranormal, and also a history anti-textbook, as I call it. He illustrated that as well. And so then I told him about my lifelong dream, and he said, let's do it. So he loved the character. And so Gary Dumm and his wife, Laura, who did all the coloring for the colors. And I met a guy introduced to a guy named George Varongos up in Seattle as the editor. And so it was a very nice team of people working together to make Snark happen. A lot has to happen to get a comic book together. And all of them did their part. And it's kind of cool. We're in such different places. George is in Seattle. I'm in LA, and Gary and Laura are in Cleveland. So we're all, we cover a lot of territory there.
Yeah, it's a lot of
collaboration.
Yeah, the collaboration over through the internet, pretty valuable.
Yes,
these days. Yeah,
exactly. Because I've never met George in person, the editor. We just communicate via social media and the internet. And Gary and Laura, my wife and I did visit them a couple of years ago. And so we've been to their house, and it's just filled with art and cats, and they're just cool people, total artists, both of them. And I guess I didn't, for those maybe that hadn't heard our first show, but my background is, just to catch people up real quick, I grew up in Seattle, born in Seattle, to parents who were from Norway. And so I was the first person in my family to go to college. And I served in the military for 6 years. And I've been teaching history. I have a PhD in history, and I've been teaching history at college level for 28 years, I guess. And so that's where I'm at right now. And of all the things I've done, I've published a lot of books, 8 books. Written 10 plays. 2 of my plays have been produced. And this is the most exciting thing that I've done, is this comic book, which, maybe sounds funny to people, but.
Well, it's not funny. I'm just happy for
you. No, I know, but I've done a lot of things, and this is really the thing that I've been most excited about. Even more exciting than the first book I published, I think, was this this comic book, and just to have the comic book in my hands after all that work that all of us put into it, it was, it was almost beyond description. It took me back to being a little kid, and it's a very emotional experience, actually. And now, of course, we got modern technology, so the book is also going to be on Comixology, which is the digital comics format, kind of the main one at that. There's a couple of different ones, but so it's both a print and because I like printed books and printed comics to have in my hand. But for those that like digital stuff, it's also going to be available as a digital comic, which helps get it out there a little bit more.
Oh, absolutely. I do prefer. I mean, it's funny because I can kind of take or leave the book form for prose, but when I read comics, I do actually prefer the print book.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just I've never. I do appreciate the different modalities for reading, and people are all different. But I do so much work on my computer, with my writing and teaching and grading and it's research and stuff. So it's kind of nice when I just want to read for relaxation and just for fun. And I like to get the book or the comic book in my hands.
Well, there's nothing wrong with being a little old school, especially when it comes to print formats and stuff.
Sure.
I like actually, I will say I do have a Comixology app on my Kindle, which is kind of funny. But
cool.
So I don't have to sit at the computer when I read in there. It's basically a book itself, just with a glowing screen. And there's the problem. Follow me wherever I take it.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of portability. You don't have to worry about spilling your coffee on your precious books or comic books or whatever. So that, that's nice. They don't get dog-eared,
So you say comic book, but how long is Snark? I'm just curious. How many pages?
It's 20 pages.
Okay, so it's a traditional kind of slim comic book volume. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's traditional comic size and volume size and number of pages, and it's the stories are there's 5 different stories within his adventure. I do it in kind of vignettes rather than one comic having the whole thing. I break it up into 5 separate sub chapters, and each one is different and has an interesting topic. Like for his first one, he crash lands because of the constant backseat driving and chattering of his cosmic staff. He ends up crash landing in Hollywood, and of course he looks like he's half reptilian alien and half human, and so he has a very strange look to him. He looks like a lizard, half a lizard anyway. So he's walking around Hollywood Boulevard and nobody notices, which is pretty typical, actually. There's a lot of unusual people walking around on Hollywood Boulevard. So nobody thinks it's weird, that he's walking there with this talking cosmic staff. So, and they meet some interesting people. They also encounter homeless people, which is a huge problem here all throughout the United States, especially in Los Angeles. So there's a story dedicated to that involves veterans. So it deals with it's humorous. There's science fiction. There's drama to it, but there's a social commentary as well. People how they look. They look at the homeless situation, and so that's one of the stories. And then he visits locations, like he goes to Devil's Tower. Because he feels there's some kind of alien connection there, and he meets a Native American guy that's there, because they have a problem with tourists not respecting, the native rights on Devil's Tower. What they call Mato Tipu is the name they call it. But there's certain times of the year tourists are not supposed to go on, try to climb Devil's Tower, and people don't respect that. And so anyway, it's kind of the basis of that story. And like Area 51, of course, he goes to Area 51 and meets people who are looking for aliens, and there they are. They have an alien in their midst. They don't even know it. So, things like that. And it's fun. It's a fun adventure. It has teeth to it, because there's social commentary in there without being preachy. It's just through the eyes of this half alien person who is trying to understand people on Earth, and he comes to find out that this idea of homelessness is kind of a theme for. I think it's going to be for the whole series. Is that everybody's really looking for that, that a home, and nobody feels quite comfortable anymore. And I think part of it's the technology and social upheaval and things changing so fast. Of course, then there's a lot of worldwide. I think it's the biggest rush of refugees that we've ever had in world history. So there's all that stuff going on, and he's observing from an alien viewpoint. So it's kind of safe. It's not political in any way. Yeah. It's just kind of an observation that a person made. Like he goes to the border. He goes to the border in between the U.S. and Mexico, and he asks the question. He's standing there looking at it, and he goes, "I wonder if this is meant to keep people in or keep them out."
Yeah.
So it's just kind of these thoughtful kind of questions that a person who doesn't know what's going on, we hear about it all the time. So we are, a lot of people have positions already, but here you are, a person who doesn't have any idea of what's going on. He wonders what's going on.
Almost from the point of innocence there, really,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Gary calls. He calls it innocent abroad. The innocent abroad.
Okay.
I guess it's been used before in movies and literature, but so that's and it brings up the idea of UFOs and aliens, which is one of the when I deal with the paranormal, of course, that's part of the big umbrella of the paranormal is aliens and UFOs, and I love that stuff. And so I this comic book came out, and next year in March, the completion of my trilogy, my Timeless trilogy, will what I call Timeless Trinity is the third book, and it's going to have an alien on the cover, so it'll be pretty dramatic.
Okay,
I'll talk about those experiences.
Yeah, it's
nonfiction. Yeah, that's the really cool thing about it. It's nonfiction, stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
And I kind of progressively had to get. I didn't want to come out right away with the first book, the Timeless book, so I kind of released a little bit of information. Second book, Timeless Deja Vu, I did a little bit more strange things. The third one, I'm just letting it all hang out. I don't care. All my experiences. So that'll be fun for people that have checked it out before. But like I said, I'm excited about that. And of course, Gary's doing the artwork in there too. But this comic book is what I'm really excited about. And I'm hoping that people enjoy it. And I hope it, it's expensive though. It's a lot more expensive than people think. Publishing a comic book, the illustrations are expensive, and the print, the printing cost, full color printing, it costs quite a bit more than you think. And then to be competitive, you can't make it too expensive. So, the sweet spot is like $350 to $399. Most Marvel and DC comics now are $399. So I priced it at $350, which I think is a decent price. And but you don't really make a lot of money. In fact, if you read about Marvel comics, they don't make any money off their actual comic books. They make all their money off marketing and movies now.
Yeah.
That's where, and same with DC too.
Okay.
DC Comics.
Yeah, I wasn't aware about the DC, but Marvel, that makes perfect sense to me. They make a killing with those movies, I imagine at this point, so they can
and all the merchandise,
the other stuff, and the merchandise. Yeah. Well, it's been fascinating learning about Snark and your other upcoming work, but we are about out of time, and so.
Oh, cool! All right. Well,
it happens.
It went fast.
It was great. It's great. It went fast. So, thanks for being on the show, Bruce, and tell people where they can find your work and what to look out for.
Yeah, you can go to get directly to Snark. You just go to Snark. Snarkcomic.com. So there's two C's there, SNARC and then COMIC. So snarkcomic.com, and they can find out what Snark is up to and get a copy if they want a print copy, and get information on the when it's released on Comixology, which should hopefully not be too long from now.
Well, wonderful. And because you mentioned Area 51, I'm going to say I am in an anthology about Area 51 now. and and that Area 51, one of the Area 51 anthologies that came out on Amazon. So that's my plug for this week. Go check out. I think it's just called Area 51. I think that's the name of the anthology. It's the one with the big gray alien on the cover. But yeah. Check that out, folks.
Oh, I love that stuff. I love that stuff.
I think a lot of people. That's a huge anthology. There's like 35 stories in it. Just pretty absurd. It's how many people are in that anthology. It's like 1,000 pages long, I bet.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, people can read that for free on Kindle Unlimited, or they can buy it, various ways. But yeah, thanks for being on the show, Bruce, and thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. Talk to you all next week, folks.
That tears it.